My mother offered to homeschool my kids, promising it would be the best education they could ever receive. I was hesitant at first, but her enthusiasm wore me down. Then one afternoon, while she was out running errands, I opened her lesson plan binder. What I found inside made my blood run cold. The carefully organized pages weren't filled with math problems or reading lists. They were filled with something far more sinister, something that made me realize I could never let her near my children again. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The conversation started innocently enough over Sunday brunch at Patricia's downtown condo. My mother had invited David and me over while the kids were at their friend's birthday party, and I should have known something was coming when she set out the good china instead of her usual casual dishware. Patricia Donovan never did anything without purpose, a trait I'd inherited but had learned to temper with warmth where she wielded hers like a scalpel. "Your school system is failing those children," she announced without preamble as she poured coffee into delicate cups that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Tyler is 8 years old and still struggling with reading comprehension. Chloe's teacher told you she's behind in math. This is unacceptable, Rachel." I felt David stiffen beside me. We'd been over this territory before, my mother's critique of every parenting decision we made, delivered with the certainty of someone who believed her way was the only correct path. "The kids are doing fine, Mom. They're adjusting to the new curriculum, and their teachers say they're making progress." Progress. Patricia set down the coffee pot with a precise click. "You sound like one of those participation trophy parents. When I raised you, progress meant excellence, not barely keeping up." She leaned forward, her perfectly manicured hands folded on the table. "I have a proposal. Let me homeschool Tyler and Chloe." The suggestion hit me like cold water. David's hand found mine under the table, a silent show of support as I processed what she was asking. "You want to homeschool our children?" "Not just homeschool. Educate them properly." Patricia's eyes gleamed with an intensity one recognized from my childhood, the look she got when she decided something and expected the world to fall in line. I'd been researching curriculum for months. Classical education, the kind that builds character and discipline. Latin, logic, rhetoric. Real literature, not these dumbed-down readers they're using in public schools. I can have them reading at a high school level within a year. "Mom, that's a huge commitment." David's voice was careful, diplomatic. "We appreciate the offer, but we're not sure homeschooling is the right fit for our family." "Because you're both too busy working to give them the attention they need," Patricia countered smoothly. "Rachel, you're trying to build your graphic design business. David, you're putting in 60-hour weeks at the firm. Who's actually spending time with these children? Who's ensuring they're not falling through the cracks?" The accusation stung because it touched on my deepest fear as a working mother. I did worry about the kids, about whether we were giving them enough attention, whether the juggling act of career and parenting was shortchanging them in ways I couldn't see. "They have us every evening and all weekend," I said, hearing the defensiveness in my own voice. "We're involved in their education. We check homework, we read with them, we go to every parent-teacher conference. And yet Tyler still can't properly decode multisyllabic words." Patricia pulled out a folder I hadn't noticed beside her plate. She opened it to reveal printed charts and graphs. I've been tracking their standardized test scores. Tyler is in the 35th percentile for reading. 35th, Rachel. My daughter's son, barely scraping by. "Those tests don't measure everything," David interjected. "Tyler is creative, he's curious about the world, he's kind to his sister and his classmates. That matters more than test scores." Patricia's smile was thin. Spoken like someone who's never had to compete in the real world. "Kindness doesn't get you into Harvard, David. Excellence does. And right now, your children are on track for mediocrity." I should have ended the conversation there. Should have gathered our things, thanked her for brunch, and left with our parenting choices intact. But Patricia had always known exactly which buttons to push, and the word mediocrity echoed in my head like an accusation. My entire childhood had been a campaign against mediocrity, Every B grade treated like a personal failure, every second place finish a source of shame. What exactly are you proposing? I heard myself ask, and felt David's hand tighten around mine. Patricia's expression shifted to something that might have been satisfaction. 3 days a week. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You drop them off at 8, pick them up at 4. I'll handle their core subjects, math, language arts, science, history. They can continue with their public school for electives and socialization on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Best of both worlds. I don't know, Mom. That seems like a lot to ask of you. I'm offering, Rachel. I'm 62 years old, retired from my position at the university, and I have time and expertise you don't have. I was a professor of education for 30 years. I know how children learn. I know how to push them to reach their potential. Her voice softened slightly. I only want what's best for my grandchildren. Surely you want that too. We'll need to think about it, David said firmly. This isn't a decision we can make over Sunday brunch. Of course. Patricia's smile returned, gracious in apparent victory. Take a week. Talk to the children. But Rachel, she fixed me with that penetrating stare I knew so well, ask yourself honestly. Are you doing everything you can for them? Or are you settling because it's easier? The question haunted me as we drove home, as we picked up the kids from the party, as we went through the evening routine of dinner and baths and bedtime stories. Tyler stumbled over several words in the chapter book we were reading together, and I found myself tensing with each hesitation. Chloe proudly showed me her math worksheet from Friday, and I noticed she'd gotten 3 out of 10 problems wrong. That night, after the kids were asleep, David and I sat in our bedroom having the conversation I'd been dreading. I think we should at least consider it, I said quietly. What if Mom's right? What if we're not doing enough? David looked at me with concern. Rachel, our kids are doing fine. They're happy, they're healthy, they're learning. Maybe not at some accelerated pace, but they're 7 and 8 years old. They should be playing and exploring, not being drilled like little soldiers. But what if they fall behind? What if we look back in 10 years and realize we missed a crucial window? My mother has credentials, David. She taught graduate students how to teach. Maybe she really could help them. At what cost? David's voice was gentle but firm. Your mother doesn't just teach, Rachel. She molds, she controls, she demands perfection. You've told me stories about your childhood. Piano lessons that ended in tears. Science projects she basically did herself because yours weren't good enough. Is that what you want for Tyler and Chloe? I thought about my childhood, about the constant pressure to excel, the feeling that love was conditional on achievement. But I also thought about my success, about the discipline and work ethic that had gotten me through college and into a career I loved. Maybe some of that pressure had been necessary. Maybe I'd been too soft with my own children, too concerned with their happiness at the expense of their potential. She's different with them than she was with me, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. She's gentler as a grandmother. And it's only 3 days a week. We'd still be their primary educators and parents. David studied my face in the dim light of our bedroom. If we do this, we set clear boundaries. We review her curriculum. We check in with the kids regularly. And at the first sign that this isn't working, we pull them out. No guilt, no negotiation. I nodded, feeling relief and apprehension in equal measure. Agreed. The following Sunday, we sat down with Tyler and Chloe to explain the proposal. Grammy Patricia wants to teach you some special lessons a few days a week, I said carefully. Math, reading, science, history. You'd go to her house instead of regular school on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. What do you think about that? Tyler's face lit up. Will there be experiments? Grammy has that big kitchen. Can we do the volcano again? Chloe looked uncertain. What about my friends? And Miss Anderson? She's teaching us about butterflies. You'll still see your friends and Miss Anderson on Tuesdays and Thursdays, David assured her. This would just be extra learning time with Grammy. Will Grammy have snacks? Tyler asked, his 8-year-old priorities firmly in place. I'm sure she will, buddy. The decision felt inevitable after that, swept along by Patricia's enthusiasm and my own unresolved anxieties about being enough for my children. We started the new arrangement the first Monday in October. I packed the kids' backpacks with notebooks and pencils, made their lunches even though Patricia insisted she would provide food, and drove them to her downtown condo with a knot of nervousness in my stomach. Patricia greeted us at the door dressed professionally in slacks and a crisp blouse, her gray hair styled perfectly. Welcome to Donovan Academy, she announced grandly, making the kids giggle. Tyler, Chloe, we're going to learn amazing things together. I've prepared your study space in the dining room. She'd transformed her formal dining room into a classroom of sorts, with 2 small desks positioned side by side, a whiteboard mounted on the wall, and shelves lined with textbooks and workbooks I didn't recognize. It looked official, almost intimidating. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The antique dining table had been pushed against the wall, covered with organized stacks of materials labeled by subject. Mom, this is impressive, I said, meaning it. When did you do all this? I've been preparing for weeks. Patricia smiled. I told you I was serious about this. She knelt down to the children's level. Now, we're going to follow a schedule every day. Math first, then a short break, then language arts, lunch, science, and history. You'll have homework to complete with your parents in the evenings. Homework on top of your lessons? David's eyebrow raised. Reinforcement is crucial for retention, Patricia said crisply. Nothing too onerous. Just practice problems and reading assignments. I hugged both kids, suddenly reluctant to leave them. You be good for Grammy, okay? Listen and do your best. We'll be fine, Rachel. Patricia's hand on my shoulder was firm, ushering me toward the door. They're in excellent hands. For the first 2 weeks, everything seemed wonderful. The kids came home excited about what they'd learned. Tyler proudly recited Latin vocabulary. Chloe demonstrated a new method for solving addition problems that seemed more advanced than what her first grade class was doing. Patricia sent home detailed progress reports each day, noting what they'd covered and what needed more work. But small things began to bother me. Tyler started saying things like Grammy says real scholars don't give up when something is hard, when I suggested he take a break from a frustrating homework problem. Chloe stopped wanting to draw during her free time, saying Grammy told her that art was for after we finish important subjects. The joy they'd initially shown was gradually replaced by a kind of grim determination. How are things going at Grammy's? I asked casually one evening as I tucked Chloe into bed. Good, she said, but her voice lacked enthusiasm. We learned about the Roman Empire today. I have to memorize all the emperors in order. All of them? Sweetheart, that seems like a lot for a 6-year-old. Grammy says I can do hard things. Chloe's small face was serious. She says I'm smarter than my teachers think I am. Your teachers think you're very smart, honey. I smoothed her hair back. Are you having fun at Grammy's? Chloe considered this. Sometimes. When we do science experiments. But Grammy gets upset when I don't remember things. She doesn't yell, but her face gets tight and she makes me do the problems again until I get them right. A warning bell went off in my head. Does that happen a lot? Only when I'm being lazy. That's what Grammy calls it. Lazy thinking. I kissed her forehead, troubled. You're not lazy, Chloe. You're learning and growing. It's okay to make mistakes. After she fell asleep, I found David in his home office. I think we need to check in with my mother about her teaching methods. Chloe said something tonight that worried me. What did she say? Just that Patricia gets upset when she makes mistakes. Calls it lazy thinking. David's jaw tightened. That's exactly what I was afraid of. Your mother doesn't know how to teach without criticism. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this is just normal frustration with learning new things. Or maybe your instincts are telling you something's wrong. David closed his laptop. Why don't you stop by unexpectedly one day this week? See what's actually happening during these lessons. I don't want to seem like I don't trust her. Rachel, she's with our children for 8 hours a day, 3 days a week. We have every right to observe. The opportunity came that Wednesday when a morning client meeting was cancelled. Instead of calling to let Patricia know I had free time, I decided to drop by around 10:30, right in the middle of what should have been their math lesson. I used my key to let myself in quietly, not wanting to disrupt the lesson. The sound of my mother's voice carried from the dining room, sharp and cold in a way that made me freeze in the entryway. This is completely unacceptable, Tyler. We've been over multiplication tables every single day. There is no excuse for not knowing that 6 times 7 equals 42. I'm sorry, Grammy. Tyler's voice was small. I forgot. You didn't forget. You didn't try hard enough. Patricia's tone cut through me like a blade from my childhood. Do you want to be average, Tyler? Do you want to struggle through life because you were too lazy to memorize simple facts? I moved quietly toward the dining room, positioned where I could see through the partially open door without being seen. Tyler sat at his desk, shoulders hunched, staring at a worksheet covered in red corrections. Tears streaked his face, though he was clearly trying to hold them back. Crying won't make you smarter. Patricia stood over him, arms crossed. It will only waste time we could be using to fix your deficiencies. Now, write out the multiplication tables from 1 to 12. All of them. And when you're done, we'll see if you can get through them without embarrassing yourself again. My hands clenched into fists. Where was Chloe? I shifted position and saw my daughter at the other desk, bent over her own worksheet, working with intense concentration. Even from my vantage point, I could see the tension in her small body. Chloe, sit up straight. You're slouching like a rag doll. Patricia moved to stand behind her. And that 6 is backwards. How many times do I have to correct your number formation? Are you paying attention at all? I'm trying, Grammy. Chloe's voice trembled. Trying isn't good enough. Results are what matter. Erase that entire row and do it again. Properly this time. I'd seen enough. I pushed the door open, and Patricia spun around, her expression shifting instantly from stern taskmaster to welcoming grandmother. Rachel. What a lovely surprise. We're just in the middle of morning lessons. Tyler and Chloe both looked at me with relief and something else, fear maybe, or shame at being caught struggling. My heart broke. I can see that, I said evenly, working to keep my voice calm. Kids, why don't you take an early break? Go get a snack from Grammy's kitchen. They didn't need to be told twice, scrambling from their desks and hurrying past me. I waited until I heard them in the kitchen before turning to my mother. What was that, Mom? What was what? Patricia's expression was innocent. I was teaching them mathematics. You were berating them. I heard you call Tyler lazy. Tell him he was embarrassing himself. I was motivating him. Patricia's voice took on a defensive edge. Children need to understand that actions have consequences. Tyler wasn't applying himself. He's 8 years old, working on multiplication tables. Most kids his age are still learning addition and subtraction at school. Exactly my point. Patricia gestured to the workbooks on the table. He should be ahead of most kids his age, not struggling with basic concepts. I'm trying to push him to his potential, not coddle him like his regular teachers do. By making him cry? By telling my daughter she's not paying attention when she's clearly working as hard as she can? This is exactly why you needed my help, Rachel. Patricia's voice rose. You're too soft on them. You want them to feel good instead of actually achieving anything. I raised you to be excellent, and look how successful you turned out. The words hit me like a physical blow because they were so close to my own fears. But standing there, seeing the evidence of what Patricia's version of excellence cost, I suddenly understood something I'd been blind to my entire life. Your version of excellence came at a price, Mom. I spent my whole childhood afraid of disappointing you. Afraid of being not good enough. Is that what you want for Tyler and Chloe? I want them to succeed in a competitive world. Patricia's jaw set in a stubborn line I knew well. I want them to have opportunities that only come to people who are willing to work harder than everyone else. If that means being firm, then so be it. Firm is one thing. This is something else. I picked up Tyler's worksheet, covered in red marks and harsh corrections. This isn't teaching, Mom. This is tearing down their confidence. Confidence without competence is worthless. Patricia snatched the paper from my hand. I'm giving them competence. You can give them all the confidence and self-esteem you want, but it won't matter if they can't compete academically. I think we need to stop this arrangement. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia stared at me as if I'd spoken a foreign language. Excuse me? This isn't working. I appreciate what you were trying to do, but your teaching style isn't right for my children. My teaching style has produced PhDs and university professors. My teaching style turned you into a successful woman despite your artistic tendencies. Patricia's face had gone pale with anger. You're making a mistake, Rachel. Those children need discipline and structure, not more coddling. What they need is to love learning, not fear it. What they need is to know they're valued for who they are, not just what they achieve. I moved toward the kitchen where I could hear Tyler and Chloe's quiet voices. I'm taking them home now. Patricia followed me. If you do this, you're sentencing them to mediocrity. You're choosing your own comfort over their future. I'm choosing their well-being over your expectations. I found the kids sitting at Patricia's kitchen island, sharing a package of cookies. Hey guys, let's pack up. We're going home. But it's only 10:30, Tyler said. We haven't finished lessons. We're done with lessons at Grammy's house. You'll go back to your regular school full-time starting tomorrow. I watched relief and confusion war on both their faces. Chloe slid off her stool and came to hug my waist. I don't have to memorize all the Roman emperors? No, baby. You don't have to memorize all the Roman emperors. As I gathered their things from the dining room, Patricia stood in the doorway, her expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been hurt. You're going to regret this. When they're struggling in high school, when they don't get into good colleges, you'll remember this moment and realize I was right. I stopped, backpacks in hand, and looked at the woman who had raised me with such exacting standards. Maybe they won't go to Ivy League schools, Mom. Maybe they'll choose paths you don't understand or approve of. But they'll know they're loved unconditionally. They'll know their worth isn't measured in test scores or achievements. That's worth more to me than any academic success. We left without saying goodbye, the kids unusually quiet in the car. When we got home, I called David at work. I pulled them out, I said when he answered. I heard her with them, David. She was doing to them exactly what she did to me. Are you okay? No. My voice cracked. But I will be. And so will they. That night, as I lay in bed unable to sleep, I kept replaying the scene in Patricia's dining room. Tyler's hunched shoulders. Chloe's trembling voice. My mother's absolute certainty that she was right. For the first time, I saw clearly how my childhood had been shaped by constant criticism disguised as high standards, love made conditional on achievement. I'd spent years trying to earn my mother's approval, never quite managing to be good enough. I wouldn't let my children inherit that burden. But the next morning brought a discovery that changed everything. Tyler mentioned that he'd left his favorite book at Grammy's house. I texted Patricia asking if I could stop by to pick it up, receiving a curt response that she'd leave it in the building lobby. When I arrived, the concierge handed me not just the book but a folder. She said you'd want this too, he explained. Curious, I opened the folder in my car. Inside was what appeared to be one of Patricia's lesson plan binders. She must have accidentally included it with Tyler's book. I should have returned it immediately. Instead, I began to read. What I found in those carefully organized pages made my blood run cold. This wasn't just a rigorous curriculum. It was something far more calculated, far more sinister. The binder revealed a systematic plan to undermine not just my children's education but their entire sense of self. And it was only the beginning of understanding how deep my mother's manipulation truly ran. I sat in my car outside Patricia's building, the lesson plan binder open on my lap, reading page after page of what I could only describe as a manual for psychological manipulation. The first section seemed innocent enough, detailed curriculum outlines for mathematics, language arts, science, and history. But as I flipped deeper into the binder, I found a separate section labeled development goals that made my stomach turn. Under Tyler's name, Patricia had written a list that read like a personality reconstruction project. Eliminate tendency toward emotional sensitivity. Build tolerance for criticism. Reduce dependence on parental validation. Increase competitive drive. Each goal had detailed strategies beneath it, methods that involved systematic criticism of his work regardless of quality, comparisons to fictional high-achieving peers, and deliberate withholding of praise to create what she called achievement hunger. Chloe's section was even worse. Address defiant tendencies, the first goal read. I nearly laughed at the absurdity. Chloe, my sweet 6-year-old who still believed in fairy gardens and left notes for the tooth fairy, was being characterized as defiant. The strategies listed beneath made it clear what Patricia meant. Any question Chloe asked, any request for clarification or expression of preference, was being treated as defiance to be corrected through repetition of tasks until compliance was achieved. But it was the final section that truly horrified me. Parental management strategies. Patricia had dedicated 6 pages to techniques for managing me and David, ways to gradually shift our perspective on the children's progress, methods for creating doubt about our own parenting capabilities, scripts for conversations designed to make us feel guilty for not pushing the kids harder. She'd even noted specific phrases that had worked on me in the past, weakness points she called them, stemming from my own childhood insecurities. She had planned this. Not just the homeschooling arrangement, but a comprehensive campaign to reshape my children according to her specifications while simultaneously undermining my confidence as a parent. The homeschooling was never about helping Tyler and Chloe. It was about having unsupervised access to mold them into her image of perfection, the same way she tried to mold me. My hands shook as I closed the binder. I needed to show David. I needed documentation of what we'd narrowly escaped. I took photos of every page with my phone, wanting a backup in case Patricia realized her mistake and demanded the binder back. Then I drove home, my mind racing with implications I was still processing. David came home early after I called him, his face growing darker as he read through the binder at our kitchen table. This is insane, he said finally, pushing it away like it might contaminate him. Rachel, this isn't just strict teaching. This is deliberate psychological abuse disguised as education. I know. I'd been pacing the kitchen for the past hour, unable to sit still. David, she had strategies for managing us. She was planning to gaslight us about our own children. And these development goals, she was trying to fundamentally change who they are. We need to document this. David pulled out his phone. I'm taking pictures of everything. If she ever tries to claim we're overreacting or keeping the kids from her unfairly, we need proof of what she was planning. Do you think we should show this to someone? A therapist maybe? I'm worried about what impact even those few weeks might have had on them. David nodded slowly. Let's make an appointment with a child psychologist. Have them evaluated. And Rachel, he reached across the table to take my hand, we need to talk to the kids about what happened. Age-appropriate conversation, but they need to understand that Grammy's teaching methods were wrong, that nothing she said about them being lazy or not good enough was true. That conversation happened that evening after dinner. We sat together in the living room, Tyler and Chloe on the couch between us, confusion evident on their faces. We wanted to talk to you both about the time you spent at Grammy Patricia's house, I began carefully. Some of the things she said to you while she was teaching, those things weren't okay. Like when she said I was lazy? Tyler asked quietly. Exactly like that. You are not lazy, Tyler. You're 8 years old and you're learning at exactly the pace you should be learning. Grammy was wrong to call you that. She said I wasn't paying attention, Chloe added, her small voice barely audible. She said I was sloppy. David leaned forward. Listen to me, both of you. You are both amazing, smart, creative kids. Grammy Patricia has some ideas about learning that aren't healthy. She thinks kids should be perfect all the time, and that's not realistic or fair. Everyone makes mistakes. That's how we learn. Are we in trouble? Tyler's eyes were wide. No, honey. I pulled him close. You're not in trouble at all. We're the ones who made a mistake by not realizing sooner what Grammy's teaching was like. We should have protected you better. We don't have to go back. Chloe's relief was palpable. You never have to go back to lessons with Grammy. You'll go back to your regular school, with teachers who understand that learning should be challenging but also kind. The tension visibly drained from both children. We spent the next hour reassuring them, answering their questions, and trying to undo some of the damage Patricia had inflicted in just a few short weeks. Later, after they were in bed, David and I sat in the growing darkness of our living room, processing everything. We need to set boundaries with your mother, David said. Clear ones. No unsupervised time with the kids. No undermining our parenting decisions. And she needs to acknowledge what she did was harmful. She won't. I knew my mother too well. She'll never admit she was wrong. In her mind, she was helping. She genuinely believes that her methods produce superior results and that any emotional damage is just weakness that needs to be overcome. Then we limit contact. David's voice was firm. I know she's your mother, but our children's well-being comes first. If she can't respect our boundaries, then we reduce her role in their lives. The thought of cutting off my mother should have been painful, but instead I felt an unexpected sense of relief. Maybe I'd been waiting for permission to step back from her demands, her constant judgment, her inability to see me or my children as anything other than projects to be perfected. Patricia called the next morning. I assume you found my curriculum binder. Her voice was cold. I'll need that back. I've read it, Mom. All of it. Including the sections about manipulating me and David. The pause that followed was heavy with calculation. I don't know what you think you read, but those were simply teaching notes. Professional observations about the children's needs. You had a section called Parental Management Strategies. You were documenting my weaknesses to use against me. I was trying to help you see past your emotional attachment to face reality about your children's deficiencies. Patricia's voice took on that sharp edge I knew so well. You've always been too sensitive, Rachel. You're reading malice into concern. There it was, the gaslighting David had predicted. The attempt to make me doubt what I'd seen with my own eyes. You called Tyler lazy and told Chloe she wasn't paying attention. You made my 8-year-old son cry over multiplication tables. Because he needed to understand that effort matters. Because coddling children doesn't prepare them for real life. Patricia's voice rose. I spent weeks creating that curriculum. I rearranged my entire life to teach your children. And this is the thanks I get? Accusations and theft of my materials? I'm keeping the binder as documentation. And Mom, you won't be having unsupervised time with Tyler and Chloe anymore. What you did wasn't teaching. It was psychological manipulation, and I won't allow it to continue. You're making a tremendous mistake. Patricia's voice went quiet, dangerous. Those children need discipline you're too weak to provide. You're choosing to handicap them because you can't handle the idea that you're not doing enough. I'm choosing to protect them. From methods that are harmful. From expectations that are developmentally inappropriate. And from someone who sees them as defective projects rather than whole human beings. Don't call me again until you're ready to apologize, Patricia snapped. And don't expect me to be available when you inevitably realize you're in over your head. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, feeling the weight of what I'd just done. I'd drawn a line with my mother, something I'd never managed to do in 34 years. The guilt came immediately, years of conditioning telling me I was being ungrateful, disrespectful, too sensitive, just like she always said. But underneath the guilt was something else. A small, growing sense of freedom. David found me there 10 minutes later, staring at nothing. I told her no more unsupervised time with the kids, I said. She hung up on me. Good. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. I know that wasn't easy. She'll never forgive me. Then that's her choice. David turned me to face him. You protected our children. That's what matters. If she can't see that what she did was wrong, if she can't respect our boundaries, then the relationship you're losing isn't one worth keeping. Over the next few days, I wrestled with my decision. Part of me wanted to call Patricia, to smooth things over, to find some middle ground. But every time I picked up the phone, I remembered Tyler's hunched shoulders and Chloe's trembling voice. I remembered the cold calculation in that lesson plan binder. And I put the phone down. We took the kids to Dr. Margaret Sullivan, a child psychologist Nicole had recommended. After individual sessions with both Tyler and Chloe, followed by a family session with David and me, Dr. Sullivan gave us her assessment. The good news is that the exposure was relatively brief. Children are resilient, and with proper support, Tyler and Chloe should recover fully from this experience. However, she looked at us seriously. I want to be clear about something. What your mother was doing, this wasn't just strict teaching. The methods described in this binder, she gestured to the copies I'd provided, constitute emotional abuse. The systematic undermining of their self-worth, the deliberate creation of anxiety around learning, these are harmful practices that can have lasting effects if continued. David's jaw tightened. We've cut off unsupervised access. We're not sure what ongoing relationship is appropriate. Dr. Sullivan nodded. That's wise. If you do choose to maintain some contact, it should be supervised, brief, and you should be prepared to intervene immediately if she attempts any of these behaviors. Your children need to see you as their protectors, especially from family members who may not have their best interests at heart. The validation from a professional helped ease some of my guilt. I hadn't overreacted. I hadn't been too sensitive. I'd done exactly what a parent should do when they discover their child is being harmed. But Patricia wasn't finished. When the direct approach failed, she pivoted to indirect manipulation. My aunt called, Patricia's sister, expressing concern that I was keeping the grandchildren away over a simple disagreement about teaching methods. Family friends reached out, people from my mother's social circle, all with the same message. Patricia was heartbroken. I was being unreasonable. Surely we could work this out like adults. Each call chipped away at my resolve. These were people I'd known my whole life, people whose opinions mattered to me. They made me sound petty, vindictive, punishing an elderly woman for caring too much. None of them had seen the lesson plan binder. None of them had heard Patricia call Tyler lazy or watched Chloe work with fear in her eyes. I started avoiding my phone. Started declining invitations to family events where I knew Patricia would be present. My world began to shrink, pulling back from connections that had sustained me because they were contaminated by my mother's version of events. Nicole noticed during one of our weekly coffee dates. You look exhausted, she observed, studying my face across the table at Brew and Bloom Cafe. When's the last time you slept through the night? I can't remember. I stirred my coffee without drinking it. Everyone thinks I'm being cruel to my mother. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am overreacting. Rachel, Nicole reached across to still my hand. I was there when you showed me that binder. I saw your face when you described walking in on her berating Tyler. You are not overreacting. You're being gaslit by people who only hear Patricia's side of the story. But what if she's right? What if I am too soft on the kids? What if they do fall behind because I'm not pushing them hard enough? Listen to yourself. Nicole's voice was gentle but firm. You sound exactly like you did when we were in college and you called your mom after getting an A-. You spent an hour convinced you were a failure because that's what she made you believe. Is that really what you want for Tyler and Chloe? To grow up thinking they're never good enough? The words hit me like cold water. No. God, no. I don't want that. Then stop letting her voice in your head. Stop letting her flying monkeys make you doubt what you know to be true. Your kids are thriving at their regular school. They're happy again. That tells you everything you need to know. She was right. In the 2 weeks since we'd pulled them from Patricia's homeschooling, both Tyler and Chloe had blossomed. Tyler was reading with enthusiasm again, bringing home library books about dinosaurs and space that he devoured. Chloe had started drawing again, her backpack full of pictures of princesses and dragons and fantastical gardens. They laughed more. Played more. Stopped asking if they'd done things correctly before trying them. But the isolation was taking its toll. I'd lost connections with extended family members who sided with Patricia. I'd withdrawn from social situations where I might have to explain or defend my decision. I was starting to feel like the problem, the difficult one, the daughter who couldn't appreciate her mother's love. One evening in late October, as David and I sat together after putting the kids to bed, he brought up something we'd been avoiding. I think we should consider moving, he said quietly. Not running away, but starting fresh somewhere else. Building a life that isn't shadowed by your mother's influence. The suggestion should have felt extreme. Instead, it felt like permission to breathe. Where would we go? I've been looking at positions in Austin. Tech scene is growing there. Good schools. Cost of living is reasonable. His hand found mine. We could build something new, Rachel. Just our family. No history, no judgment, no one telling you you're not good enough. Austin, Texas. Nearly 2,000 miles from Portland and Patricia's sphere of influence. The idea terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. What about your job? My clients? I can work remotely or find a new position. Technology professionals are in demand everywhere. David squeezed my hand. And your graphic design business is mostly online anyway. You could build your client base anywhere. This isn't about my career or yours. It's about giving our family room to grow without constant interference. I thought about it for days, weighing the enormity of such a move. Leaving the only city I'd ever lived in. Starting over professionally. Pulling Tyler and Chloe away from their school and friends. It felt dramatic, excessive even. But every time I tried to talk myself out of it, I'd remember the lesson plan binder. I'd remember Patricia's absolute certainty that she was right and I was wrong. I'd remember the network of people she'd mobilized to pressure me into backing down. And I'd realize that staying meant constantly defending my choices, constantly fighting against her influence, constantly worrying about what she might do next. Moving meant freedom. Space to parent my children without criticism. Room to heal from a lifetime of conditional love. We told Tyler and Chloe about the possibility on a Saturday morning in early November. They were playing in the backyard, building an elaborate fort out of cardboard boxes. How would you feel about moving to a new city? I asked, sitting down on the grass beside their construction project. Somewhere warm where we could have adventures and meet new people? Would we still be a family? Chloe asked, the question so simple and profound it made my throat tight. Of course we would. We'd all move together. New house, new school, new place to explore. Tyler looked up from the box he was decorating. Would Grammy Patricia come too? No. Grammy Patricia would stay in Portland. The relief on both their faces confirmed what I already knew. We were making the right choice. When can we go? Tyler asked, and I realized my 8-year-old son was ready to leave behind everything familiar just to escape his grandmother's shadow. David's job search moved quickly. By Thanksgiving, he'd accepted a position with a tech company in Austin starting in January. We put our house on the market the first week of December and got an offer within days. The speed of it all felt like validation, like the universe was confirming this was the right path. I didn't tell Patricia. I couldn't face another confrontation, another attempt to manipulate me into staying. Instead, I sent a brief email 2 weeks before our move. We're relocating to Austin for David's career. This is what's best for our family. I included no return address, no invitation to visit, no promises of maintaining contact. Just a simple statement of fact. Her response came within an hour. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Running away doesn't solve problems. You're depriving those children of family, of their heritage, of anyone who will tell you the truth about your failures as a parent. Don't expect me to be here when you come crawling back. I read it once, then deleted it. Her words had no power anymore. I'd seen behind the curtain of her concern and found only control. I'd heard her truth about my failures and recognized it as projection of her own fears. I was done being managed by her expectations. The day we left Portland was gray and drizzling, typical December weather. We'd said goodbye to Nicole the night before, promises made to video chat regularly and visit when we could. Tyler and Chloe were excited, bouncing in their car seats as we loaded the last boxes into the moving truck. David and I took one last look at the house we'd brought both babies home to, then climbed into our packed SUV. As we merged onto the highway heading south, I felt something shift inside me. The guilt was still there, the sense that I should feel worse about leaving. But underneath it was something stronger. Hope. Possibility. The chance to build a life defined by what we wanted, not by escaping what we didn't. Texas, I said to David as the miles rolled past. We're really doing this. We're really doing this, he confirmed, reaching over to squeeze my hand. In the back seat, Tyler and Chloe had already moved on, arguing cheerfully about which boxes contained their favorite toys. They weren't looking back. Neither was I. Whatever came next, whatever challenges awaited us in Austin, they would be our challenges. Our choices. Our life to build without Patricia's blueprint dictating every decision. The road stretched out before us, empty and full of promise. I pressed my foot on the accelerator and drove toward our future, leaving the weight of my mother's expectations somewhere in the rainy Portland morning behind us. Austin greeted us with unseasonably warm January weather, a sharp contrast to the cold rain we'd left behind in Portland. Our rental house in Travis Heights was smaller than what we'd owned, a cheerful bungalow with a front porch and a backyard that opened onto a greenbelt. The neighborhood felt different from our old subdivision, more eclectic, with artists and musicians living alongside young families and retirees. Nobody knew us here. Nobody had expectations about who we should be. The first week was chaos. Unpacking boxes, registering the kids for their new school, David starting his new position while I tried to establish some kind of routine in an unfamiliar city. Tyler and Chloe handled the transition better than I'd expected, curious about everything rather than anxious. They explored the greenbelt behind our house with wonder, discovering trails and a creek that became their new favorite playground. I struggled more than I wanted to admit. Without the structure of my Portland life, without familiar places and routines, I felt unmoored. My graphic design business had stalled during the move, clients dropping away when I explained I was relocating. I spent my days unpacking and trying to make the rental feel like home, but underneath the busy work was a growing sense of uncertainty about what I was supposed to do next. The kids' new school was called Riverside Academy, a small private institution that emphasized creative learning and individual attention. It was expensive, stretching our budget in ways that made me nervous, but David insisted it was worth it. After what happened with your mother, he'd said, they deserve a place that values who they are, not just test scores. Their teachers were everything Patricia wasn't. Ms. Chen, Tyler's third-grade teacher, greeted us warmly on the first day and spent 20 minutes asking Tyler about his interests before even mentioning academics. She had a wall in her classroom covered with student artwork and writing, celebrating their creativity rather than correcting their mistakes. When Tyler hesitantly mentioned he sometimes struggled with reading, she smiled and said that's why we're here, to help you grow at your own pace. Chloe's teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, was equally encouraging. He taught first grade with energy and humor, making learning feel like play. During the parent orientation, he'd said something that stuck with me. Children learn best when they feel safe to make mistakes. My job isn't to demand perfection. It's to create an environment where curiosity thrives. I'd nearly cried hearing those words, understanding how different this philosophy was from Patricia's approach. These teachers saw education as nurturing growth, not forcing compliance. Within days, both kids were coming home excited about school again, sharing stories about projects and friends rather than worrying about getting answers wrong. But while the kids adjusted, I floundered. My days felt empty without work to fill them. I'd reach for my phone to call Nicole, then remember the time difference meant she was still at work. I'd think about browsing my favorite coffee shop in Portland, then remember I was 2,000 miles away. The isolation I'd felt at the end of our time in Portland had followed me to Texas, except now I didn't even have familiar surroundings to anchor me. David noticed. On a Saturday morning in late January, he found me staring at my laptop in the kitchen, my empty portfolio website open on the screen. "When's the last time you worked on a design project?" he asked gently. "I lost most of my clients with the move. Starting over feels overwhelming." He sat down across from me. "What if you didn't try to recreate what you had before? What if you built something new? You've always talked about doing more creative work, less corporate branding. Maybe this is your chance." The suggestion planted a seed. That afternoon, while David took the kids to explore Zilker Park, I opened a fresh document and started brainstorming. What did I actually want to do? Not what would make the most money or impress people, but what would make me excited to work each day. The answer came surprisingly quickly. I wanted to design for small businesses and nonprofits, organizations that were trying to make a difference rather than just maximize profit. I wanted projects that meant something. Over the next few weeks, I rebuilt my business from the ground up. New website, new portfolio focusing on mission-driven work, new pricing structure that reflected my values rather than market rates. It felt risky, vulnerable, like I was admitting I couldn't compete in the mainstream and was carving out a niche for misfits instead. But it also felt authentic in a way my previous work never had. My first Austin client came through a connection at Riverside Academy. Another parent, hearing I was a graphic designer, asked if I could help with her nonprofit that provided art supplies to underfunded schools. The budget was tiny, but the mission resonated. I threw myself into the project, designing a logo and website that captured the joy and possibility of creative education. When she saw the final designs, she cried. "You understood exactly what we're trying to do," she said. "This is perfect." That project led to another, then another. Word spread through the community about the designer who really listened, who cared about the mission as much as the aesthetics. Within 2 months, I had more work than I could handle, all of it meaningful, all of it feeding something in me that had been starved during my years of corporate logo design. David watched my transformation with quiet satisfaction. "You're different here," he observed one evening as we sat on our front porch, watching the kids play in the yard. "Lighter somehow. I feel different. Like I'm finally doing what I'm supposed to be doing instead of what I think I should be doing. That's what leaving gave you. The space to figure out who you are without your mother's voice drowning out your own." He was right. Distance from Patricia had given me room to breathe, to experiment, to fail without judgment. I was building a life based on my values rather than trying to meet her impossible standards. And it felt revolutionary. The kids were thriving too. Tyler's reading improved steadily under Ms. Chen's patient guidance. She never pushed or compared him to other students, just celebrated each small victory and provided support where he needed it. His confidence grew along with his skills. By March, he was reading chapter books independently, choosing stories about adventure and exploration that he'd devour in days. Chloe blossomed in Mr. Rodriguez's class. She'd always been creative, but Patricia's rigid approach had stifled that impulse. Now, encouraged to express herself, she filled notebooks with stories and drawings. Mr. Rodriguez displayed her work proudly, telling her she had a gift for storytelling. The little girl who'd been afraid of making mistakes was becoming bold, willing to try new things because she knew effort mattered more than perfection. I made friends too, slowly at first. Other parents at Riverside Academy who appreciated my design work. Neighbors who stopped to chat when we were in the yard. A book club I joined on a whim that met monthly at a local bookstore. These relationships felt different from the ones I'd had in Portland, untainted by history, built on who I was now rather than who I'd always been. One connection proved particularly significant. Linda Torres ran an educational consulting firm that helped schools implement creative learning programs. We met at a Riverside Academy fundraiser in early April, bonding over shared frustration with standardized testing and one-size-fits-all curriculum. When I mentioned my mother's homeschool disaster, Linda listened with professional interest. "What you're describing sounds like academic abuse," she said seriously. "There's a growing body of research about the harm caused by excessive pressure and criticism in educational settings. It can create lifelong anxiety around learning and achievement." I showed her photos of Patricia's lesson plan binder on my phone, watching her expression shift from interest to concern to anger. This is textbook psychological manipulation. The way she documented strategies for undermining your parenting, for systematically breaking down the children's confidence, this goes beyond bad pedagogy into intentional harm. That's what our therapist said. It still feels surreal sometimes. Like maybe I overreacted. Linda shook her head firmly. "You protected your children from someone who saw them as projects to be perfected rather than people to be nurtured. That's not overreacting. That's good parenting." She paused, seeming to consider something. "Would you be interested in speaking about this experience? I'm organizing a conference on healthy educational practices. A parent's perspective on recognizing and escaping harmful teaching methods could be incredibly valuable." The idea terrified me. Talking publicly about Patricia, about my failure to protect my kids sooner, about the whole painful mess felt like exposing wounds I was still healing. But it also felt important. How many other parents might be experiencing something similar, doubting their instincts because an authority figure insisted they knew better? "I'll think about it," I told Linda, though part of me already knew I'd say yes. Spring in Austin was beautiful, warm and vibrant with wildflowers covering the hills. We spent weekends exploring, finding swimming holes and hiking trails, eating barbecue and breakfast tacos, building memories in this new place that was starting to feel like home. The kids stopped asking when we'd visit Portland. This was their city now, their life. I hadn't spoken to Patricia since the email I'd sent before leaving. She'd tried calling a few times those first weeks, leaving voicemails that oscillated between hurt and anger. I'd deleted them without listening all the way through, knowing she'd say nothing I needed to hear. Eventually the calls stopped. I told myself I felt relief. Mostly I did. But sometimes, late at night, I'd find myself wondering what she was doing. Whether she ever thought about what she'd done. Whether she missed Tyler and Chloe or just the opportunity to shape them. The anger had faded, leaving something more complicated. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of sad acceptance that she'd never be the grandmother my children deserved. In May, I agreed to speak at Linda's conference. The event was scheduled for September, giving me months to prepare. Linda helped me craft my presentation, focusing on warning signs parents should watch for and steps to take if they suspected educational abuse. We didn't use Patricia's name, didn't make it sensational. Just a straightforward account of what happened and what I'd learned. Preparing the presentation meant revisiting that painful period in detail. I read through Patricia's lesson plan binder again, this time with emotional distance that made the manipulation even clearer. I reviewed notes from our sessions with Dr. Sullivan. I interviewed Tyler and Chloe, age-appropriate conversations about what they remembered and how they felt about it now. Both were doing well. Tyler said he barely remembered Grammy's lessons except that they made his stomach hurt. Chloe said she was glad we moved somewhere Grammy couldn't find us. That last comment stuck with me. My 6-year-old daughter felt safer knowing her grandmother couldn't reach her. That single statement justified every difficult decision I'd made. Summer arrived with scorching heat that sent us seeking air conditioning and swimming pools. David's job was going well, his skills valued by a company that prioritized innovation over hierarchy. We bought a house in Travis Heights, a fixer-upper with good bones that we could make our own. The kids helped choose paint colors for their rooms, Tyler picking deep blue like the ocean, Chloe choosing lavender with glow and the dark stars on the ceiling. As we settled into true ownership rather than temporary rental, I realized I'd stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. For months after leaving Portland, I'd half expected Patricia to show up, to find some way to reassert control. But she hadn't. She'd let us go, whether out of respect for boundaries or wounded pride I didn't know. Either way, the absence of her interference allowed us to truly build the life we wanted. My business continued to grow. I hired a part-time assistant, another designer who shared my values. We moved from my home office to a small space in the South Congress District, a quirky neighborhood that felt right for our mission-driven work. Clients came from across the country, drawn by our portfolio and reputation for understanding nonprofit needs. I was making more money than I had in Portland and enjoying the work far more. David and I grew closer too. Without the constant stress of managing Patricia's interference, we had energy for each other again. Date nights became regular occurrences. We talked about dreams and plans without the shadow of judgment hanging over us. Our relationship, strong before, became a true partnership built on mutual respect and shared values. The kids thrived in ways that sometimes surprised me. Tyler joined the school robotics club, discovering a passion for engineering that Ms. Chen encouraged enthusiastically. Chloe started taking art classes at a community center, her natural creativity flowering under instruction that emphasized expression over technique. They were becoming themselves, full and unique, not dimmed or shaped by someone else's expectations. In late August, Linda called with unexpected news. The conference had drawn more interest than anticipated. Several news outlets wanted to cover it, including a major parenting magazine interested in interviewing me specifically. "Your story resonates," Linda explained. "So many parents struggle with boundary issues with grandparents. Educational abuse isn't widely discussed, but your willingness to speak openly could help a lot of families." The attention made me nervous. Going public meant Patricia might see it, might respond. But it also meant reaching parents who needed to hear that trusting their instincts was right, that protecting their children from family members was sometimes necessary. I agreed to the interview. The journalist was kind but thorough, asking detailed questions about Patricia's methods, my decision to cut contact, and how the experience changed our family. I was honest about the guilt, the second-guessing, the fear that I'd overreacted. But I was also clear about the lesson plan binder, about the systematic nature of Patricia's manipulation, about the immediate improvement in my children once we removed them from her influence. "When can we go back to visit Portland?" Tyler asked one evening at dinner, several weeks before the conference. "I want to show my old friends our new house." The question caught me off guard. "We could plan a trip," I said carefully. "Though we'd need to stay with Nicole since we sold our house." "Would we see Grammy Patricia?" Chloe's voice was small. David and I exchanged glances. "Would you want to?" I asked gently. Both kids considered this. "I don't know," Tyler finally said. "She was mean when she was teaching us. But she's still Grammy. She is still Grammy." I chose my words carefully. "And if you wanted to see her, we could arrange something short, like lunch with Daddy and me right there. But you don't have to. It's okay to not want to see someone who hurt you, even if they're family." "I think I'd rather just see Nicole and my friends," Tyler decided. Chloe nodded in agreement. Relief and sadness mixed in equal measure. My children had chosen their own well-being over family obligation. They'd learned, faster than I had, that love shouldn't hurt. That lesson alone made everything worth it. September arrived with slightly cooler temperatures and the bustle of a new school year. Tyler started 4th grade with confidence, Chloe moved up to 2nd. Both were excited rather than anxious, a stark contrast to their dread during Patricia's homeschooling. On the morning of Linda's conference, I dressed carefully in professional clothes that made me feel competent rather than defensive. David kissed me goodbye with encouragement. "You're going to help people today," he said. "Remember that." The conference was held at the Austin Convention Center, a sprawling venue that intimidated me until I saw the audience. These were educators, parents, counselors, all people who cared about children's well-being. Linda introduced me warmly, sharing context about educational pressure and the fine line between high standards and harmful demands. Then it was my turn. I walked to the podium, notes in hand though I barely needed them. The story had become part of me, integrated into who I was now rather than a wound I was still nursing. I told them about Patricia's offer, about my initial gratitude and growing concern. About the kitchen conversation I'd overheard and the bedroom scene I'd witnessed. About the lesson plan binder that revealed the full scope of her intentions. I shared the impact on Tyler and Chloe, the fear and self-doubt that had replaced their natural curiosity. I talked about the difficulty of setting boundaries with a parent, the guilt and second-guessing, the social pressure to forgive and forget. And I spoke about healing, about the space we'd created by moving, about watching my children rediscover the joy of learning. When I finished, the applause was sustained and heartfelt. During the question period, hands shot up immediately. How did you know when to draw the line? How do you handle family members who think you're overreacting? How do you help children recover from educational trauma? I answered as honestly as I could, sharing what had worked for us while acknowledging every family's situation was unique. After the session, people approached with their own stories. Grandparents who'd pushed too hard. Parents who'd realized their tutoring methods were causing harm. Teachers who'd witnessed concerning family dynamics. Each conversation reinforced that our experience, while specific to us, touched on something universal. The struggle to balance love and boundaries. The courage required to protect children even from people who claimed to care about them. The Parenting magazine article came out in October, a thoughtful piece that contextualized our story within larger discussions about grandparent boundaries and educational pressure. They'd used photos of us in Austin, the four of us laughing together in our backyard, a visual representation of healing and new beginnings. I braced for backlash, for angry messages from Portland defending Patricia or accusing me of exploitation. Instead, I received hundreds of messages from grateful parents. People who'd been doubting their instincts about pushy relatives. People who'd endured similar experiences and felt validated hearing someone else speak about it openly. People who were in the middle of their own difficult decisions and found courage in our story. The response was overwhelming in the best way. Patricia never responded publicly. I didn't know if she'd seen the article or my conference presentation. Part of me hoped she had, hoped it might prompt reflection. But mostly I'd stopped needing her acknowledgement. Her opinion of my choices no longer had the power to wound me. Life continued its forward momentum. David got promoted. My business landed a major contract with a national nonprofit. Tyler and Chloe grew and learned and became more fully themselves with each passing month. We built traditions in Austin, favorite restaurants and annual events and weekend routines that belonged to us alone. The life we were creating was messy and imperfect and absolutely right. On a warm November evening, nearly a year after we'd left Portland, I sat on our front porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. David joined me, 2 glasses of wine in hand. Happy? He asked, settling into the chair beside mine. I considered the question, thinking about where we'd been and where we'd arrived. Yes. Genuinely happy. Not perfect, not without challenges, but happy in a way I wasn't sure I'd ever been before. No regrets about leaving? Not even one. I looked at him, this man who'd supported every difficult decision without judgment. Thank you for pushing me to protect them. For believing me when I said something was wrong. You didn't need me to tell you that. You knew. You just needed permission to trust yourself. Maybe. Or maybe I needed someone whose opinion mattered more than hers to validate what I already felt. Either way, we did it. We got out, we rebuilt, we're okay. More than okay, David corrected, reaching for my hand. You're thriving. All of you. He was right. We were thriving, growing into ourselves in soil that nourished rather than demanded. The journey from that kitchen in Portland to this porch in Austin had been painful and necessary. I wouldn't want to do it again. But I also wouldn't trade where it had brought us. This life, built on our terms, was worth every difficult choice that created it. The invitation arrived in December, nearly 2 years after we'd left Portland. It was addressed to all of us, a cream-colored envelope with elegant calligraphy that I recognized immediately as my mother's handwriting. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it at the kitchen table, David watching from across the room with concern already evident on his face. Patricia Donovan requests the honor of your presence at a celebration of educational excellence. Riverside Academy parents and faculty are cordially invited to the annual Winter Gala supporting innovative learning programs. Saturday, January 15th. Austin Convention Center. I read it 3 times before the words fully registered. My mother was coming to Austin. Not just coming, but attending an event at my children's school. The school where I'd become involved on the parent advisory board. The school where everyone knew our story because of my conference presentation and the magazine article. How had she even known about this event? David took the invitation from my numb fingers. This can't be a coincidence. The timing, the location, this is calculated. I need to call Linda. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. She's organizing this gala. She would have told me if Patricia had somehow gotten involved. Linda answered on the second ring, and I could hear the apology in her voice before she even spoke. Rachel, I was going to call you today. Your mother contacted me 6 weeks ago. She saw the magazine article, researched my consulting firm, and offered a substantial donation to support our educational initiatives. I didn't make the connection to you until yesterday when I was finalizing the guest list and saw her RSVP. 6 weeks. Patricia had been planning this for 6 weeks while I'd been blissfully unaware, thinking we'd finally escaped her reach. What kind of donation? $50,000. Linda's voice was tight. It's funding 3 new programs at Riverside Academy. Creative writing workshops, advanced mathematics enrichment, and a scholarship fund for students from low-income families. Rachel, I'm so sorry. If I'd known she was your mother, I never would have accepted. The irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia was funding exactly the kind of innovative, child-centered education she'd scorned when I pulled Tyler and Chloe from her homeschool program. Either she'd changed dramatically, which seemed unlikely, or this was a power play designed to force a reunion on her terms. You can't uninvite a major donor, I said slowly. And honestly, her money will help kids who need it. Just because she and I have issues doesn't mean students should suffer. You're more gracious than I'd be in your position. Linda paused. Will you still come to the gala? I'd understand if you didn't want to attend. I looked at David, who was already shaking his head. This is our community now, I said firmly. Our school, our city, our life. I'm not going to hide because Patricia decided to show up. But Linda, I need you to do something for me. Make sure she's seated far from us. And if she tries to approach the kids without David or me present, I need staff to intervene. Absolutely. Consider it done. And Rachel, if you need anything that night, I'll be watching. You won't face her alone. After we hung up, David pulled me into his arms. We don't have to go. We could take the kids somewhere that weekend, be conveniently out of town. No. I pulled back to look at him. Running is what she'd expect. She's counting on us being uncomfortable enough to avoid the event. I won't give her that satisfaction. Besides, this is about the school and the programs her donation is funding. We separate our feelings about her from the good that money can do. You're sure? I'm sure. Though I reserve the right to panic later. The panic came that night, after the kids were asleep. I lay in bed imagining a dozen scenarios, each worse than the last. Patricia approaching Tyler and Chloe directly, telling them I'd been wrong to keep them apart. Patricia making a scene, demanding an audience with her grandchildren in front of our entire community. Patricia playing the wronged grandmother so convincingly that people questioned my version of events. David listened to my spiraling anxiety without trying to fix it. Then he said something that grounded me. She has no power here, Rachel. These people know you. They've seen what kind of parent you are, what kind of person you are. They've heard your story directly from you, not filtered through her perspective. One night, one event, she can't undo 2 years of the life you've built. He was right, but knowing it intellectually didn't stop the dread that built over the following month. I told Tyler and Chloe about Patricia's attendance at the gala, keeping my explanation simple. Grammy Patricia donated money to your school for special programs. She'll be at the big party in January. You might see her there. How do you feel about that? Tyler shrugged with the casualness of a 9-year-old who'd moved on from childhood hurts. That's okay, I guess. Will she try to teach us again? No. Absolutely not. This is just a party where she'll be one of many guests. Chloe was more thoughtful. Will she be mad at us? The question pierced me. She might be upset, but that's not your responsibility. If she's unhappy, it's because of choices she made, not anything you did. And Daddy and I will be with you the entire time. You're safe. As January 15th approached, my anxiety transformed into something else. Determination. I'd spent too much of my life worried about Patricia's reactions, trying to manage her emotions, attempting to be good enough to earn her approval. That version of me had stayed in Portland. The woman I'd become in Austin didn't need her mother's validation to know she was doing right by her children. I bought a new dress for the gala, deep red silk that made me feel confident and strong. David wore a suit that made him look distinguished and successful. Tyler complained about his button-down shirt but looked handsome once we convinced him to tuck it in. Chloe twirled in her navy velvet dress, delighted by how the skirt flared when she spun. We arrived at the convention center fashionably late, a strategic choice that meant Patricia would already be seated and we could control when and how any interaction happened. The ballroom was decorated beautifully, winter whites and silver with twinkling lights that gave the space a magical quality. Riverside Academy had gone all out, transforming the utilitarian convention space into something elegant. Linda found us immediately, greeting the kids warmly before pulling me aside. She's at table 12, far left side of the room. You're at table 3, near the stage with the other advisory board members. I've briefed security, they know to keep an eye on your table and intervene if she approaches the children inappropriately. Thank you. I squeezed her hand. For everything. You've got this. Linda's confidence bolstered my own. Go enjoy your evening. You've earned it. We made our way to our assigned table, stopping frequently to chat with other families. These were people who'd become friends over the past 2 years, parents who valued the same kind of education we did, who'd supported my work with the advisory board, who knew pieces of our story. Their warmth reminded me that we belonged here, that this community was ours regardless of Patricia's presence. I saw her as we reached our table. She was seated with other major donors, distinguished-looking people in expensive clothing. Patricia herself looked elegant in a cream-colored suit, her silver hair styled perfectly. She was holding court at her table, clearly charming her tablemates with practiced ease. For a moment, I saw her as strangers must, a refined older woman with poise and confidence. Then she looked up and our eyes met across the crowded room. Her expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession. Surprise, calculation, something that might have been longing, then a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. She inclined her head slightly in acknowledgement. I nodded back, a minimal response that felt like all I could manage, then deliberately turned my attention to the people at my own table. The evening progressed through cocktails and dinner. Linda gave a speech about innovative education and the importance of community support. Several students performed. Tyler's robotics team demonstrated their latest project, a group of 5th graders sang. Chloe's 2nd grade class presented a poetry reading that made parents reach for tissues. It was a showcase of exactly the kind of joyful, creative learning Patricia had dismissed as insufficient. Throughout it all, I felt her gaze periodically landing on our table. Not constant, but regular enough that I remained hyper-aware of her presence. David's hand found mine under the table during the student presentations, a steady anchor. The kids were oblivious, caught up in the excitement of seeing their friends and teachers in fancy clothes. The formal program ended and the mingling portion of the evening began. Live music started, some parents drifted toward the dance floor, others clustered in conversation groups. Tyler and Chloe immediately found their friends, a pack of children racing between tables under the indulgent eyes of parents ready for a social evening. I was talking with another advisory board member about next year's budget when I sensed Patricia approaching. She moved through the crowd with purpose, heading directly toward me. My companion noticed my attention shift and gracefully excused herself, leaving me standing alone as Patricia closed the distance between us. Rachel. Her voice was controlled, pleasant even. You look well. Patricia. I kept my tone neutral. Thank you for your donation. The programs it's funding will benefit a lot of students. That was the point. Her smile was tight. I've been following your advocacy work with interest. Innovative education seems to be a passion of yours now. The children are thriving here. The teachers understand that learning should build confidence, not destroy it. A direct hit, though Patricia's expression barely changed. I've always believed in challenging children to reach their potential. Perhaps my methods were too advanced for your comfort level. There it was, the subtle accusation wrapped in concern. The implication that I was too soft, too easily disturbed by rigorous teaching. 2 years ago, that criticism would have made me doubt myself. Now it just made me tired. Your methods were emotionally abusive. A child psychologist confirmed it. An education expert used your lesson plans as an example of harmful practices at a conference. I'm not debating this with you again. I made mistakes in execution, perhaps. Patricia's concession was minimal, grudging. But my intentions were good. I wanted the best for Tyler and Chloe. Good intentions don't erase harm. And tracking my weaknesses to manipulate me into compliance wasn't a mistake in execution. It was deliberate psychological warfare. Her composure cracked slightly. I'm their grandmother. I have a right to be part of their lives. You had that right. You lost it when you prioritized your vision of who they should be over who they actually are. I kept my voice low, aware of people nearby who might overhear. You could have apologized. You could have acknowledged that your approach was harmful. Instead, you cut contact and showed up here 2 years later trying to force a reunion on your terms. I donated $50,000 to their school. Surely that demonstrates my commitment to their well-being. It demonstrates you still think you can buy your way into what you want. This isn't about money or grand gestures. It's about respecting boundaries and accepting that your role in our lives ended when you refused to change. Patricia's eyes hardened. You've poisoned my grandchildren against me. Turned them into props for your victim narrative. The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. They barely remember you. Tyler said your lessons made his stomach hurt. Chloe was relieved when we moved somewhere you couldn't find us. Those are their words, their feelings, not anything I planted. Because you didn't give me a chance to build a better relationship. You just ran. I protected them. And myself. From someone who couldn't love us without trying to remake us. I took a breath, steadying myself. I'm not doing this anymore. You can stay at the gala, enjoy the evening, feel good about your donation. But you will not approach my children tonight. You will not corner them or me again. And you will not use this event as a platform to rewrite history. You can't keep me from them forever. I'm not keeping you from them. I'm requiring that any relationship happens on terms that prioritize their emotional safety. When and if you're ready to acknowledge what you did and commit to respecting our boundaries, we can discuss limited contact. Until then, we're done with this conversation. I walked away before she could respond, my heart pounding but my steps steady. David appeared at my elbow immediately. How bad? Exactly as expected. She's not interested in accountability, just access. But I held my ground. I'm proud of you. He kissed my temple. The kids didn't even notice the conversation. They're too busy showing off their dance moves. I looked toward the dance floor where Tyler was attempting some kind of robotic movements while Chloe and her friends dissolved into giggles. They were happy, secure, unburdened by the tension between their mother and grandmother. That was what mattered. The rest of the evening passed without further interaction. Patricia remained at her table or in conversation with other donors, making no attempt to approach us again. I caught her watching the kids a few times, her expression unreadable. What did she see when she looked at them? The potential she'd tried to unlock through harsh methods? The grandchildren she'd lost access to through her own choices? Or just evidence that we were doing fine without her? Near the end of the night, Linda approached with unexpected news. Your mother asked me to give you this. She handed me a sealed envelope. Said she didn't want to disturb you again but wanted to leave you with her thoughts. I almost refused to take it, but curiosity won. Inside was a handwritten note on Patricia's personal stationery. Rachel, I've watched you tonight with your family, in your community, living the life you've built. I see that you're happy, that the children are flourishing. I can't say I understand all your choices or agree with your characterization of my teaching methods. But I can see the results speak for themselves. Perhaps there are multiple paths to raising successful children, and mine isn't the only way. I don't expect forgiveness or reconciliation. I do hope that someday, when enough time has passed, we might find a way to have some relationship, even if it looks nothing like what I'd envisioned. Until then, know that I'm proud of the life you've created, even if I struggle to accept that it required my absence to flourish. Patricia. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. But it was the closest Patricia had ever come to admitting she might have been wrong about something. I read it twice, looking for hidden barbs or manipulation, finding only what seemed like genuine if limited insight. David read over my shoulder. It's something, he said quietly. Not enough, but something. Not enough to change anything, I agreed. But maybe enough to stop waiting for her to understand. She won't, not really. She can't see past her own certainty long enough to truly grasp the damage she caused. But at least she's acknowledging that our way works too. What will you do with it? Keep it. Someday Tyler and Chloe might ask about her, want to understand why we made the choices we did. This can be part of that conversation. Evidence that she wasn't entirely a villain, just someone whose love was so conditional and controlling it became harmful. We gathered the kids as the gala wound down, Chloe half asleep on David's shoulder, Tyler animated as he recounted every detail of the robotics demonstration. As we walked to the car, Tyler asked the question I'd been dreading. Mom, was that Grammy Patricia you were talking to earlier? Yes, honey. She donated money to help your school, remember? She wanted to say hello. She looked different. Older maybe. Tyler's observation was matter of fact. Why didn't she come talk to us? Sometimes grown-ups have complicated relationships. I chose my words carefully. Grammy and I don't see eye to eye about some important things. It's better if we're polite but keep our distance. Like how I'm polite to Brandon at school even though we're not friends anymore. Tyler's 9-year-old logic made me smile despite the weight of the conversation. Exactly like that. You can be respectful without being close. Oh. Okay. And just like that, he moved on, his childhood resilience protecting him from the complexity of adult relationships. Chloe was already asleep, unburdened by questions about grandmothers who'd become distant figures in her young memory. That night, after the kids were in bed, David and I sat in our living room debriefing. You handled that with more grace than she deserved, he said, pulling me close on the couch. I handled it the way I needed to for my own peace. Not for her benefit, for mine. I thought seeing her would make me angry or hurt. Instead, I just felt sad. Sad that she can't let go of control long enough to have genuine relationships. Sad that Tyler and Chloe will grow up without their grandmother because she couldn't love them as they are. Her loss. Definitely her loss. I rested my head on his shoulder. But also, in a strange way, our gain. If she'd been different, we might have stayed in Portland. I'd still be doing corporate design work I didn't love. The kids might still be in a school system that wasn't right for them. Her toxicity forced us to rebuild, and what we rebuilt is better than what we left behind. David was quiet for a moment. Do you think you'll respond to her note? I don't know. Maybe eventually, just to acknowledge that I received it. But not now. Now, I want to focus on what we have rather than what we don't. Tomorrow Tyler has his robotics competition. Chloe's art show is next week. You have that big presentation on Thursday. Those are the things that matter. He kissed the top of my head. When did you get so wise? Somewhere between Portland and Austin. Probably around the same time I stopped caring what Patricia thinks of my choices. We sat in comfortable silence, the house quiet around us, our children sleeping peacefully in their rooms. Outside, Austin hummed with its usual energy, this city that had given us space to heal and grow. The confrontation with Patricia had been inevitable, I realized. She was always going to find a way back into our orbit, always going to try one more time to exert influence. But her power was gone, dissolved by distance and time and the life we'd built without her interference. The gala had been her best move, a calculated attempt to force interaction on neutral ground with social pressure to be civil. And we'd survived it. More than survived, we'd demonstrated to ourselves and to her that we were fine, better than fine, without her involvement. That realization felt like closing a chapter that had been left uncomfortably open. In the weeks following the gala, life returned to normal. Tyler's team won their robotics competition. Chloe's artwork was selected for display in a local gallery's children's exhibition. David's presentation led to a promotion. My business landed its biggest contract yet, a year-long project with a national environmental organization. We were busy, fulfilled, moving forward. Patricia sent one more letter, arriving in February. It was brief, just a few lines thanking us for allowing her to attend the gala and expressing hope that someday we might find a path toward limited contact. She included photos from when Tyler and Chloe were babies, precious memories from before things had fractured. I filed them carefully in a box with other family mementos, artifacts of a relationship that existed in a different form now. I didn't respond immediately, letting the letter sit while I decided what I wanted to say. Finally, in early March, I wrote back. A single page, carefully worded. I acknowledged her note from the gala and her follow-up letter. I explained that we weren't ready for regular contact but that I appreciated her recognition that we were doing well. I set clear boundaries, supervised visits only if we did eventually move toward reconnection, with the understanding that any criticism of our parenting or attempts to undermine our authority would end the relationship permanently. I included recent photos of the kids, not as an olive branch but as acknowledgement that they were her grandchildren even if her role was now minimal. Sending that letter felt like the final step in a long journey. I wasn't forgiving her for what she'd done. I wasn't inviting her back into our daily lives. I was simply closing the loop with clarity and honesty, letting her know exactly where things stood without anger or ambiguity. What she did with that information was her choice. Spring arrived with bluebonnets covering the hills and warm breezes that made everything feel possible. We took a family trip to the coast, building sandcastles and hunting for seashells, making memories untainted by old wounds. Tyler learned to body surf. Chloe collected enough shells to fill a large jar. David and I walked the beach at sunset, hands linked, talking about the future with excitement rather than anxiety. On the drive home, Chloe asked a question from the back seat. Mom, are we ever going back to Portland? Maybe someday to visit Nicole and your old friends. Why do you ask? I was just thinking. She paused, choosing her words with the seriousness of a 7-year-old working through big concepts. I like it better here. Everyone is nicer. And Grammy Patricia isn't here to make things scary. Her honest assessment of our life before and after crystallized everything. We'd created a space where our children felt safe, where learning was joyful, where family meant support rather than criticism. Patricia's absence wasn't a loss to them. It was a relief. That truth was both heartbreaking and liberating. We're not going back, I said firmly. Austin is our home now. This is where we belong. Good. Chloe returned to her drawing, satisfied. Tyler nodded agreement, already absorbed in his book. David caught my eye in the rearview mirror and smiled. The conversation with Patricia, the gala, the careful letters, all of it faded into background noise against the vibrant reality of our daily lives. She'd tried to stage a reunion on her terms and discovered we didn't need what she was offering. Her donation helped students at Riverside Academy, a genuine good that came from her presence. But it didn't buy her access to our family or absolution for her actions. In the end, her grand gesture had accomplished something she didn't intend. It gave me closure. Proof that I could face her without crumbling, that the life we'd built was solid enough to withstand her attempts to undermine it, that my children were secure enough in their own worth to be unaffected by her presence. The gala wasn't the reconciliation she'd hoped for. It was the confirmation that we'd truly moved on. 5 years after leaving Portland, I stood in the backyard of our Austin home watching Tyler's 14th birthday party unfold around me. He'd invited friends from robotics club, kids from his honors science class, a diverse group that reflected the community we'd built here. Chloe, now 12, had commandeered the music playlist and was teaching her friends an elaborate dance she'd choreographed. David manned the grill, laughing with other parents who'd become genuine friends over the years. Nicole had flown in from Portland for the celebration, her first visit in over a year. She found me by the fence, 2 glasses of lemonade in hand. "This is beautiful, Rachel. Look at what you've created here." I looked around at the scene before me. Tyler confident and happy, surrounded by friends who valued his quirky intelligence. Chloe expressing herself freely, unburdened by anyone's expectations of who she should be. A home filled with warmth and laughter rather than tension and judgment. "We got lucky," I said quietly. "Finding this place, this community, the right schools for them. Luck had nothing to do with it." Nicole bumped my shoulder affectionately. "You made hard choices and built something real. That takes courage, not luck." My phone buzzed with a text message. Patricia's name on the screen still caused a small flutter of anxiety even after all this time. The message was brief, professional almost. "Happy birthday to Tyler. Hoping he's having a wonderful day." I'd sent her updates twice a year since that exchange of letters, photos, and brief summaries of the kids' activities. She responded with short messages of acknowledgement, never pushing for more. Our relationship had settled into this distant but civil pattern, enough connection to honor the biological bond without the intimacy that required trust. "Is that your mom?" Nicole asked gently. "Just birthday wishes for Tyler." I pocketed the phone. "It's fine. We've found our equilibrium. Do you ever regret it? Cutting her out the way you did?" I thought about the question honestly. Sometimes I wish she'd been different, that she could have been the grandmother they deserved. But regret the choice itself? Never. Every good thing in our lives now came from that decision to prioritize their well-being over her expectations. Tyler appeared at my elbow, slightly breathless from whatever game the kids had been playing. "Mom, can we do cake soon? Everyone's asking." "Absolutely. Let's round everyone up." As we gathered around the outdoor table, 14 candles flickering on the chocolate cake Tyler had requested, I caught David's eye across the crowd. He smiled, that particular smile that meant he was thinking the same thing I was. We'd made it. Not just survived but truly thrived. The scared family that had fled Portland in the middle of the night was gone, replaced by people who knew their own strength. Tyler made his wish and blew out the candles to enthusiastic cheering. Chloe immediately started cutting slices with the precision of someone who took cake distribution very seriously. Friends clustered around, plates in hand, the comfortable chaos of teenagers and tweens mixing with adult conversation. Later, after the party wound down and the last guests departed, we sat together on the back porch in the cooling evening air. Tyler was inside video chatting with friends who'd already left. Chloe was sketching in her ever-present art journal. The 4 of us together in our own space, peaceful and complete. "Do you think we'll ever go back to Portland?" Tyler had asked a version of this question periodically over the years, testing whether home might shift again. "Maybe to visit sometime." David's answer was the same one we'd given before. "But Austin is where we live. This is home now." Tyler nodded, satisfied. "That's what I told my friends when they asked." I said we used to live in Oregon but we're Texans now. The simple declaration made me smile. He'd claimed this place as his own, integrated it into his identity in ways that had nothing to do with running from anything and everything to do with belonging somewhere. That was the gift distance from Patricia had given us, the space to become ourselves without constant correction. Nicole left the next morning with promises to visit again soon. After dropping her at the airport, I drove to my office in South Congress. The business had grown beyond anything I'd imagined, a team of 6 designers now working on projects that aligned with our mission-driven values. We'd won awards, attracted national clients, built a reputation for thoughtful work that served communities rather than just corporations. It was exactly what I'd wanted to create once I'd stopped trying to meet someone else's definition of success. My assistant handed me messages as I walked in, including one that made me pause. A university in Portland wanted to discuss a potential guest lecture series on ethical design practices. The irony wasn't lost on me. Portland calling me back not as the struggling designer who'd fled but as someone whose work was valued enough to teach others. I called the number, spoke with the department chair, and agreed to consider the opportunity. It would mean returning to Portland for the first time since we'd left, facing the city where so much had broken and been abandoned. But I'd be returning on my own terms, as myself rather than as Patricia's daughter, sharing knowledge I'd gained through building the life she'd tried to prevent. That evening over dinner, I mentioned the opportunity to the family. They'd want me to come back to Portland for a few days to give lectures at a university. How would you feel about that? Would Grammy Patricia know you were there? Chloe's question was cautious but not fearful. Probably. It's not a big city. Word would likely reach her. But that's okay. I'm not avoiding Portland because of her anymore. I'm just choosing to live somewhere else. Will you see her? Tyler asked. I don't know. Maybe briefly if she asks. But my reason for going would be the work, not family reconciliation. Both kids considered this with the maturity that came from growing up knowing their parents made thoughtful decisions about difficult relationships. They'd learned that love could have boundaries, that family didn't mean unlimited access, that sometimes distance was the kindest option for everyone involved. Those lessons would serve them well navigating their own relationships as they grew. I accepted the lecture series, scheduled for the following spring. When I told Patricia through our brief communication channel, her response surprised me with its warmth. I'm proud of your professional success. I hope Portland welcomes you as the accomplished designer you've become. Perhaps we could have coffee while you're here, if you're comfortable with that. Brief, supervised if you prefer, just a chance to see you as an adult rather than always through our complicated history. The request was reasonable, acknowledging our boundaries while expressing genuine interest. I agreed to a single coffee meeting, 1 hour in a public place, a small concession that felt manageable now that I was secure in who I'd become. Months later, sitting across from Patricia in a Portland cafe, I saw her with clearer eyes than I'd ever managed before. She'd aged, softer around the edges in ways that went beyond physical appearance. We talked carefully about neutral topics, my work, her volunteer activities, the changes in Portland since I'd left. She asked about Tyler and Chloe with genuine interest rather than criticism. I shared updates freely, proud of who they were becoming. Near the end of our hour, she said something unexpected. I'd been working with a therapist these past few years. Trying to understand why I pushed so hard, why control felt like love to me. I don't expect you to forgive or forget, but I want you to know I've been trying to do better, even if it's too late for us. It was the closest she'd ever come to apologizing. Not quite there, but acknowledging fault in a way she'd never managed before. I appreciated the honesty in her words even as I knew it didn't change our reality. Our relationship would remain distant by necessity, but perhaps it could be distant and peaceful rather than distant and wounded. Flying back to Austin after my successful lecture series, I felt lighter than I had in years. I'd faced Portland without fear, faced Patricia without anger, and confirmed what I already knew. The life we'd built in Texas wasn't about running from something. It was about running toward who we were meant to be. That distinction made all the difference. Tyler met me at the airport with a sign he'd made reading "Welcome Home, Mom," decorated with robots and stars. Chloe had baked cookies that were slightly burnt but made with love. David wrapped me in a hug that felt like coming home to myself. This was my family, these were my people, and we'd built something beautiful from the rubble of what broke. The past would always be part of our story, but it no longer defined us. We'd transformed pain into wisdom, loss into freedom, and impossible choices into the foundation of lives well lived. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.